Loki is yet another Disney Plus series in the Marvel Cinematic Universe after the experiences of WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. It picks up during the events of Avengers Endgame when Loki escapes with the Tesseract in the alternate timeline that was inadvertently created by the Avengers time heist. And Loki ends up being captured by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, whose responsibilities are to make sure that the space-time continuum is kept in order whenever someone goes out of their way to break off their projected path and keep everything in the right order, otherwise the timeline will be completely splintered. But instead of being pruned, as they would usually do for all these variants, Loki's recruited by Agent Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, and tasks him with hunting down a variant of Loki himself. And what we get is a point A to point B type of season with Loki trying to figure out what exactly he wants to do and where exactly he fits in this new timeline, trying to figure out who exactly is behind the TVA. Is it the Timekeepers, or is it somebody else more sinister than them? I'm sure other people have wondered this, but after Avengers Endgame, when Loki gets away with the Tesseract, I did wonder, where the hell did he go? And are they going to explain what happened after that? And the Loki series was announced, so naturally, I think it was pretty clear that that's what they were going to explore. And in a case of someone like Loki, I think a TV series is a much more suitable medium for him. And we all love Tom Hiddleston as that character, and he's probably one of the best villains that the MCU has showcased. And in this series, he is just as good, and it gives us a chance to see Loki in a different light, fleshing out certain aspects of his past that we didn't really get in the previous movies, such as that memory fight that he has with Sif, played by Jamie Alexander, who comes back for one more time. And we also get some information about his sexuality. I guess now that he's bisexual? That's kind of surprising. I also think in a lot of ways excusable because his sexuality was never really brought up until now. I think they had a creative license to expand on his sexuality and give us a chance to get a different insight on him. And also, he's a shapeshifter. I think that kind of explains why he's attracted to the opposite gender, because he says that finding a princess or a prince or whatever he says to Sylvie in that one episode. When he said that, I thought, oh boy, there's gonna be some backlash. And as far as I could tell, there really wasn't that big of a deal, but not to get too deep into that stuff. But I like the way that they handled it. They mentioned his sexuality, just like in a small line of dialogue, without being so obvious. They didn't treat it like some big celebratory moment. They just mentioned it and they moved on. I also really like his interplay with Agent Mobius, played by Owen Wilson. And I'm really happy to see Owen Wilson back in a show or a movie again, because I know he's probably done other stuff in the years since he had some personal troubles at some point in the past, but it's nice to actually see him doing an acting job again. And he's doing the Owen Wilson thing, oh man, what's going on here? We're in the Marvel Universe? Wow. His interplay with Tom Hiddleston is probably the highlight of this series, besides Loki's exchanges with Sylvie. And Agent Mobius is not an idiot. He knows that if you push the right buttons with him, he starts to suspect, okay, something's going on here. I'm not really sure if I believe this anymore. When we first meet him, he's pretty loyal to the TVA, and he's not really willing to listen to reason. For whatever reason with Loki, he starts to question his ethos and ends up siding with Loki in order to determine what's going on behind the scenes. And Sylvie is the female version of Loki from another timeline, and she wants to find the Timekeepers or whoever's behind the TVA and wipe them all out. And it leads to a very interesting dynamic between the two. Very romantic without it being so on the nose. And what Sylvie manages to uncover is that the other TVA SWAT guys are people that were taken from their respective timelines and brainwashed in order to be submissive to the TVA, that they had previous lives before, similar to what Wanda did in WandaVision with that town in New Jersey. And the show's vibe is very unique to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is a different side of this universe that we hadn't seen yet. It's very eerie and weird, but it all feels legitimate, like it all feels accessible to the audience, especially with that Miss Minutes character, who might as well be the MCU's version of Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park. And the way she explains how this timeline and the TVA works, obviously, as other people pointed out, very similar to the DNA sequence in the first Jurassic Park. Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. Time travel! Interestingly enough, that voice actress, Tara Strong, was the voice of Harley Quinn in the new Batman animated series and also the Batman Arkham video games. Anybody who's anybody is going to dip their toe into this universe first chance they get. And we get that obvious filler episode in episode 3 where that planet is about to be destroyed by that oncoming moon. Does lag on a bit for a while. Then in the next episode, very split second, they get captured by the TVA, and then ultimately it takes another twist where those timekeepers are actually androids. And when that happened, my list of questions got even bigger. And Loki gets pruned by that one TVA official, but is sent into a state of limbo where he meets all these other Loki variants, including an alligator. Another instance where Marvel is not afraid to embrace its weirdness. The classic Loki is actually played by Richard Grant, who was General Pride in Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And then we also get another version of Loki who's the leader of this ragtag gang. We saw him in one of the previews. I honestly thought that that's the kind of Loki that we were going to be focusing on in this series. I'm not complaining necessarily, but it's a nice little misleading of the audience on Marvel's part. You gotta admit, they do a good job of keeping secrets. But with the help of Sylvie and Mobius, Loki has to fight that Goliath cloud or whatever, and they manage to enchant it and stop it. And they go off into the Citadel, which immediately I thought, is that Doctor Doom's hideout? Could he be the one behind this? And then I realized, no, I think that's too soon. But we get introduced to Kang the Conqueror, who I think for all intents and purposes is the next big baddie post-Thanos. And at first when they revealed them, I thought we were getting like a Mandarin type of twist, but then as the scene goes on, as it intercuts between the TVA and the Citadel, we as the audience get this vibe that becomes increasingly more apparent that this guy is not messing around. There was a multiverse war that happened, which he was responsible for ending. There's all these different variants of himself that were scattered all across the spectrum of the MCU, and then he offers Loki and Sylvie a choice. Kill him and risk another multiverse war just like it, or replace him as the main timekeeper in order to keep the singular timeline intact. Sylvie, who feels wronged by the TVA capturing her, wants to kill him in revenge, but Loki, who's come around and seeing the weight of his actions, as we saw in that speed-up clip that Mobius played on what his future could have been like had he stayed there, he's able to come to his senses and go, no, Sylvie, come on. I know better than this now. This is not the way. Everything I've done has led me to this point, and it's not going to get me anywhere, and I saw where it would lead me if I stayed there in New York. Don't go down the same path that I did. Sylvie ultimately says, screw you, I'm doing it anyway, and she kicks him back to the TVA, and similar to what Peter Quill did to Thanos in Infinity War, where he was responsible for half the universe population being wiped out, Sylvie kills Kang, and all these different timelines and multiple universes start spreading out to the point where the TVA cannot stop them. And Kang says, I'll see you soon. That can only mean one thing. This guy might be dead, but who's to say that another variant of him's not going to show up?
There's no going back. You've changed things. Forever.
Loki shows up at the TVA where Mobius and everybody else realize what's happening. They don't recognize him though. Only for Loki to discover the statue in place of one of the timekeepers is Kang the Conqueror, which that scene reminded me of the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie where Mark Wahlberg's character discovers that Abraham Lincoln Memorial, but it's an ape instead of a human. And not to get too crazy here, I don't know if this would really happen, but if the rumors are true with No Way Home and that Tobey Maguire is in the MCU, I have to imagine one of those timelines has to be his universe. And apparently, searches on Tobey Maguire were trending after this recent episode, so... Sorry, got distracted. And we're getting a second season of Loki, which is not really surprising. There's a lot more directions that this could go in. And I also love the musical score by Natalie Holt, especially when it plays in the ending credits. It adds more to the weirdness and the eeriness that is being set up in this show. And it further heightens all the possibilities for me on where they could go in the MCU. And I think this shows people who thought that maybe the MCU would be done after Endgame. I don't think so, guys. There's still a lot more they have to offer. And if the trailers for these movies coming up are any indication, Marvel's not done yet. This shows that you could go anywhere in the Marvel universe. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm always happy to give them the benefit of the doubt. Overall, I really like this first season of Loki. It's a little bit slow in the 3rd to 4th-ish episode. Honestly, I like it more than WandaVision. That's just me personally. I feel like WandaVision had a pretty promising start, but then after a while it kind of lost its steam for me. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I really like. I think that's an overall solid show. Do I like this better than the latter? I'd have to think about that. Depending on if the Falcon and Winter Soldier gets another season, which I don't know if it will. But Loki I could definitely see going more further deep into this side of the universe. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm all for whatever Marvel decides to do going forward. Those are my thoughts on Season 1 of Loki. Comment below and tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next video.